Tonight on The Buzz, we are looking at lighting. Changes in camera technology are driving dramatic changes in the lighting gear we use. Tonight, we talk with both instrument and accessory makers to discover the latest trends and technology in lighting. We start with Jakob Ballinger, founder of the Light Bridge. For Jakob, lighting isn't about tools, it's about the art and quality of light. Tonight, he explains why he started the company and a new way of thinking about light itself. Next, Toby Sali is one of the co-owners of BB&S Lighting. Founded over 19 years ago, they have pioneered a new, more accurate lighting system called remote phosphor lighting. Tonight, Toby describes what this is and why it is showing up on more and more sets. Next, Freider, Hochheim, the president and founder of Kino, talks about why the company was started and how they created the first color-accurate fluorescent tube. Now they're moving into LED, and he explains why tonight. Next, as lighting instruments get bigger, it becomes harder and harder to control the light, to put it where you need it without losing shadows. Tonight, Stefan Karle, the founder and managing director of DOP Choice, explains how their lighting accessories help control soft lights. All this, plus James DeRuvo with our weekly DoddleNEWS update. The buzz starts now.
Since the dawn of digital filmmaking,
authoritative,
one show serves a worldwide network of media professionals,
current,
uniting industry experts,
production,
filmmakers,
post-production,
and content creators around the planet.
Distribution.
From the media capital of the world in Los Angeles, California, the Digital Production Buzz goes live now.
Welcome to the Digital Production Buzz, the world's longest-running podcast for the creative content industry, covering media production, post-production, and marketing around the world. Hi, my name is Larry Jordan. Camera technology, especially sensor sensitivity, is improving rapidly, and this is driving major changes in lighting technology as well. The days of 5,000-watt tungsten seniors are over. Now we're awash in power-sipping LED soft lights and camera sensors that can render a scene lit only with candles. It's a whole new world. So tonight, we're talking with 4 companies on the leading edge of lighting about what all these changes mean and how cinematographers can shape light and create shadows when it comes from an instrument the size of a bedsheet. Before we start, though, I want to invite you to subscribe to our free weekly show newsletter at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Every issue every week provides quick links to the different segments on the show, plus articles of interest to filmmakers. And best of all, it's free and comes out every Saturday morning. And now it's time for our DoddleNEWS update with James DeRuvo. Hello, James.
Greetings, Larry.
And a very happy August to you as well. What's our lead story this month?
Well, I have some bad news. Red founder Jim Janner took to the Red Hydrogen One user forums this week to break the news that a so-called certification issue has caused the August launch date of the Android smartphone to be delayed a second time. And now there's no word of how long that delay will be. Verizon and AT&T have decided to move on to give their launch window to another product. They're going to support the holographic smartphone, but if it's delayed, they gotta put it somewhere else. And while Janner didn't give users any details other than that there was a so-called certification issue, other reports indicate that there is a parts problem deep in the Hydrogen One design, which is causing the certification delay.
James, do you think this is a hardware issue or a question of excessive marketing hype?
Well, Jim Janner is no stranger to hype, that's for sure, but he's always delivered on it. So I really do think that this is a legitimate hardware issue for a smartphone design that's very complicated. And if it is hardware related, I'm just speculating that it could be, since it's a certification issue, it could be related to federal UL electrical standards. But that's just speculation on my part. Regardless of what it really is, the issue is also going to delay the launch of Red's Hydrogen One network, which was a video streaming portal designed to give users a revenue stream for their for-view content. My take is that making innovative technology is very hard, and Janitor is no stranger to product development delays. Red's very first camera, the Red 1, was delayed, as was the Red Scarlet. This stuff, Larry, it just happens.
All right, that's Red. We have any other camera news today?
The Sony a7 III mirrorless camera may have a slight image squeezing problem. Filmmakers are finding that when you shoot full-frame 4K video at 24 frames per second, there is a very slight squeeze on the image frame versus how the frame looks in other modes like Super 35 crop. The issue was discovered when a trio of content creators on YouTube did a comparison of the full-frame mode versus Super 35, and then looked at other modes as well, including 1080p HD.
Well, how big a problem is this?
Fortunately, the squeeze is barely noticeable. It was only picked up when using this complicated test chart, and then all of a sudden things weren't lining up. And my guess is that Sony will put out a firmware fix pretty quickly, but until then, users have two choices. So you can either ignore it, or you can adjust your x-axis in the aspect ratio by 1% and everything's back to norm.
James, I just realized that we haven't talked about drones for a while. Do we have any drone news?
Maybe. DJI's next Mavic 2 drone may have a Hasselblad camera. Based on images from a British retail catalog called Argo, the Mavic 2 will come in two versions, one with a 2x optical zoom and a dolly zoom smart mode for the 4K camera, and one with a larger 1-inch image sensor and a Hasselblad camera design. The Mavic 2 Pro will also incorporate several advanced features, including improved 3D obstacle avoidance that is omnidirectional, larger motors, and a 31-minute flight time.
Well, what's the relationship between DJI and Hasselblad?
Well, DJI purchased a very huge interest in Hasselblad last year. And since then, the camera company has been working on drone-worthy technology. There's already a Hasselblad camera on the M600 Pro drone, and we've been hearing rumors of a Phantom 5 model with replaceable lenses. Since DJI has had to cancel their July Plus event at the last minute due to what was reported to be issues with the new camera system, that tracks with the catalog entry being prepared for a fall release date. So I'm guessing that we'll get an official announcement sometime in late August or early September, just in time for the fall holiday season.
Well, that's Red and Sony and DJI. What other news we have this week?
Other stories we're following: Nikon continues to officially tempt us with breadcrumbs of the new full-frame mirrorless camera. We start a tutorial run on how to edit on Blackmagic's DaVinci Resolve, and it may be the beginning of the end for the MoviePass movie subscriber service. That's what we're working on. What's tonight's show about?
I was just thinking about your camera news. Tonight, we're looking at how changing camera technology is changing the lighting gear we use with all of these new cameras.
Yeah, that's a very interesting topic, because if you've ever seen a still image picture of street lights that have been replaced with LED lights, it completely changes the way a camera picks up the light off of a road. So that's a very good topic to discuss.
It is, and I think we've got some really good companies to give us a very interesting perspective. I'm looking forward to the show. And James, for people that want to go on the web to follow the stories that you and your team are covering, where do they go?
All these stories and more can be found at DoddleNEWS.com.
And James DeRuvo is the editor-in-chief of DoddleNEWS and joins us every week. James, we'll see you next Thursday.
Talk to you anon.
Here's another website I want to introduce you to, DoddleNEWS.com. DoddleNEWS gives you a portal into the broadcast, video, and film industries. It's a leading online resource presenting news, reviews, and products for the film and video industry. DoddleNEWS also offers a resource guide and crew management platform specifically designed for production. These digital call sheets, along with their app, directory, and premium listings, provide in-depth organizational tools for busy production professionals. DoddleNEWS is a part of the Thalo Arts community, a worldwide community of artists, filmmakers, and storytellers. From photography to filmmaking, performing arts to fine arts, and everything in between, Thalo is filled with resources you need to succeed. Whether you want the latest industry news, need to network with other creative professionals, or require state-of-the-art online tools to manage your next project, there's only one place to go: DoddleNEWS.com. Jakob Ballinger is the founder of the Light Bridge. Prior to that, he was a gaffer. His focus is on the quality of light, bridging between the technical and artistic aspects of lighting. Hello, Jakob. Welcome.
Hi, Larry. Thanks to be with you.
Jakob, tonight we're talking about lighting. And at one point you wrote, and I quote, "I feel our big quest for the future of lighting is not to focus on tools as a solution for creative challenges, but on a new mindset. Impressionism was not invented by Cézanne because he found new paint." What do you mean by this?
We live in a time and age where we think that if we buy something or a tool itself can help us with our problems or be a solution for everything. And I feel especially the film industry, obviously, because it's driven by its wonderful technical possibilities it has given us for now over 100 years. The truth is, it's an artistic expression, right? We like movies because it's close to dreams. We like dreams because they're very emotional, very atmospheric. And that's all about what filmmaking is about. So when we think about it that way, it's all about emotions. And when we think about emotions, it's about how precise we can make those work. If we focus on tools, it's like saying the paintbrush is more important than actually what we're painting. And I think it's really important that now that we've come so far in a technological world and the digital cinema has given us so much possibilities, lighting is not about exposing anymore. It's actually about creating something. And I think this is where it's really important not to say, oh, let's find a tool, let's cling on to that and say, hopefully something new will come from it. But actually, I think we can go much further than that. And that's something that's the most exciting thing, I think, at the times right now.
Okay, but let me push back for a second. If, in fact, the challenge of lighting is in the art and the craft of the lighting, why did you found a tool company that makes lighting gear?
Well, when you go to a place where you can buy tools, and there's hundreds of hammers there, right? And you take a hammer, it's a cheap hammer, it does what it should do. And then there's a hammer there that you use, and suddenly you feel, wow, this feels really nice in your hand. And suddenly you go home and work and you do whatever you have to do. And at the end of the day, you're hitting the hammer all day. Your wrist doesn't hurt anymore. And you've seen, look at that. That's actually not a hammer. It's actually somebody that was trying to create a tool that can let me work all day. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to do with the Light Bridge, is to make intuitive tools. We don't want to focus on the tools. We actually want to focus on what you can do with those. And like a paintbrush, like I mentioned, you have to forget the pencil in your hand when you're drawing. And I think tools have to be that way. And I think there's not enough out there. There's wonderful colleagues that do beautiful things, but I think especially when it comes to painting with light, I think we've got something to say.
What is your new approach to lighting? I love the phrase painting with light, but what more specifically are you talking about?
Well, if we go back again to the beginning of filmmaking, it was just dark. You know, the celluloid films had 5, 20, 25 ASA, so they needed to put lights onto there to get an exposure. So all our craft of lighting actually comes from there. It comes from the theater. It comes from the need to expose. Now, our whole craft of lighting, still even 100 years later, is still a little bit based upon that. The whole approach of saying we need a key light, we need a fill light, right? Fill light is actually a physical thing that we put into a room because it still comes from the time where we said, wow, it's too contrast, we have to add something. So Kristen Berger, the DP I've been working for now for the last 10 years, had this idea to say, well, it doesn't look natural. It doesn't feel the way he wants light to feel. And he comes from documentary, so he's been, looking for light at the last 60 years. And what he came across was something that Da Vinci already had discovered is if you follow the path of light and you let it travel in its very lucid, beautiful way, the way, for example, it comes in through a window, suddenly you don't have to set up fill light anymore because the room, the way it's built, the way you set the light, the way it comes in, actually does all this for you. But actually to look at a room, see how it works, and then let the light flow within it. And that actually is the new approach to there. So it's something really basic, something, Egyptians have been doing, reflecting light. But to take this approach to film, I think has shown in the results of the movies we've done that actually there is a new quality and texture to light and shadow we haven't seen up until now.
Yes, but I think you're making an assumption. Back 100 years ago when we were exposing film stock was so slow that we had to come in with screaming amounts of light to be able to get enough light through the lens to expose the film. As cameras become much more sensitive to light, moving from ASA 50 and 100 in the early days of film to 8,000 today with our digital cameras, we can get much better exposures with much less light, which gives us more creative latitude. So my question is, how has changing camera technology changed the technology of light?
There was this time where suddenly there was this big fear in the lighting industry. Well, we don't need light to expose digital chips anymore. What do we do now? And I think here's again the main point that you were touching on in the beginning is suddenly we're freed from that and we can use the light actually to create atmosphere, to create emotions. And I think that's where the tools and the thought process, and thoughts are tools too, I think, come in handy real now these days. We go into a room, we turn the camera, it's bright enough. But what do we do now? What do we want to talk about? What kind of emotion do we want to talk about? And that's where it gets really exciting.
That also, I think, is a good lead into the products that the Lightbridge offers. What do you make?
Our first product, it's actually a startup I started 2 years ago with an idea that Christian Berger had a very long time ago already. It's high-tech aluminum reflectors that actually reflect 97% of your light, which means you've got precise control over diffused light. Those 4 different kinds of diffusion reflectors, they take in the light, they only have 3% loss, and they give you a whole different range of diffusion, controlled. And that is something we haven't seen on the sets up until now, because now, as we know, we wanted more diffused, we put a frame, and then we have more spill light, and then we have to bring in a lot of gear to actually be able to control this again. And this is something that we've been able to reduce. So what this means is now is more creative freedom on the sets, more place on the set to, for creativity. Where can I place the camera? Where can actors move? You set up less restrictions, which gives you a faster workflow and, of course, more creative freedom.
Well, how does a reflector give you more creative freedom as opposed to the light itself?
It's a very good question. The answer is real simple, actually. If you think again, we go back to what the flow of light is. When you set up a light in a room, there's this term called sourciness. When you have the feeling you feel a light source. And that has to do with the inverse square law. Like the closer you get to the light source, the hotter it's going to become. And the more it feels like, oof, there's a light source here, but actually there isn't. So, even on big sets, when we place lights out in front of windows, when actors move towards the window, sometimes it feels like, there's a light source standing out there. And with the reflectors now, you can let the light travel further. So when you put up a reflector and you put the light source further away, suddenly the light source that would have been 2 feet away suddenly feels like 6 feet away, which actually gives you more space to work, to walk actors within spaces and rooms, and it feels more natural. And it changes the quality of the shadow as well. And that's the reason, for example, on the Angelina Jolie movie we did By the Sea, press was writing, well, this movie wasn't lit at all, which was mad. We had 2 months of pre-rig on the movie. But the feeling of it, is it looks, something's there that just feels, it just was shot. The dream of every cinematographer is to say, it just looked beautiful. We just can shoot it the way it is. Yeah, we found within the reflectors, actually, that they've been developing.
What do you see as the future of lighting?
We're just at the starting point. We've had beautiful lighting in films up until now, and we've seen certain progresses the way, the technical parts have helped us. And I really like what Roger Deakins once said. He was asked, well, what's the most important thing about lighting? And he said, you have to grow as a human being. And I really love this sentence because it really brings it down to the point. When you have all the technical stuff down, it's really, what do you want to do now? And I think this is the main question we have to ask ourselves. Now that it's so simple to light, and it's even simpler now with the cameras and the lighting gear is getting lighter, it's really, what do we want to do? And not what new tool do we want to bring on?
Jakob, these are some interesting ideas, but sometimes it helps to actually see what you're talking about. Where can we go to get some references about what we can do with light?
Christian Berger, he always goes to Hammershøi, and he was a Danish painter. And he actually only painted his room. That was all he did, and his wife from behind, in all different kinds of lights. And that's where Christian took all his references to. I personally really love Mark Rothko because the first time I saw his paintings and I saw when you go up closer, it's not just red on black. There's so many colors in between. And especially now that we're doing so much with color, I'm learning so much from these masters because it's not just about two colors. It's about how many different nuances you can bring in actually to bring one color out brighter. So I think it's really important not just to say referencing film on film, but actually going to as many medias as possible to find the joy in the job we're doing each day.
Well, I also recommend people visit the Lightbridge website. You've got some really, really excellent visual tutorials on how people are using your gear and new effects they're creating with lighting. So I recommend your website as well.
Well, thanks. And for us, it's not just about selling a product, but actually sharing how we're using it. And we're learning as well, and so it's just great to share with the community out there.
Jakob, for people who want more information about the Lightbridge and the products you make, where can they go on the web?
You go to lightbridge.com.
That's all one word, the light, L-I-G-H-T, bridge, B-R-I-D-G-E, thelightbridge.com. And Jakob Ballinger is the founder of the Lightbridge. And Jakob, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Toby Sali has a background in audio technology as well as marketing for visionary brands like Light Panels and the Open Television Network. Now, Toby is a co-owner in BB&S Lighting and heads up marketing their new LED lighting gear. Hello, Toby. Welcome back.
Hi, Larry. How you doing?
I'm doing great because I'm really looking forward to your comments. How would you describe BB&S, the company?
BB&S Lighting was started in Copenhagen, Denmark, 19 years ago by Peter Plesner and his best friend and their wives and their baby boys. So brother, and sons. BB&S has made products for other manufacturers, major brands, a good half dozen, 7 or 8 of them, for about 10 years. After that, he started making only products for his own brand, which is BB&S.
Well, there's so many lighting companies out there. I mean, you worked with one of the most well-known, which is Light Panels. Why should someone consider BB&S lighting?
When it first started out 9 years ago with our own brand, it was just another company that made really good lights. They sold a ton of them in Europe. They got involved with remote phosphor lighting about 5 years ago. And there were only 2 of us in the game for remote phosphor at that time. A couple other people have tried, but haven't really put out what we have. In remote phosphor, I'm going to go there because the older stuff doesn't really matter today as much because the cameras are faster and everything's a little bit different today with 4K.
What is remote phosphor technology?
Remote phosphor technology means that instead of having the phosphor, which is an organic compound all over the world, everybody has the same stuff, is mounted or painted directly onto the LED. It's the old way of doing things. If you put too much electricity into it, the LED got hot and the phosphor would burn around the edges and you would get discoloration. We all know that because we've all experienced it pretty much in the business over the years. Also, they would gradually get bad, say 3 years, 6 years, 5 years into the use of the light. It would gradually deteriorate, which you didn't really realize it because you were around it all the time. And remote phosphor, we actually separate the phosphor from the LED light emitting diode, separated by a minimum of a 1/4 inch on our smallest stuff to 1.5 inches on the bigger stuff like the Area 48. Being that we are able to get, in the old days we measured everything CRI, color rendering index. Today, since 2012, we measure everything called TLCI, Television Lighting Consistency Index. The TLCI measurement is much more strict, much more accurate, and all of our lights are coming in at 98 TLCI. We could claim 99, but we're not that kind of company. So we call it 98.
I know that it's impossible to achieve perfection, but what would be a perfect TLCI number?
98.
So it's not like out of 100 or 105 or 110.
No. A few people have actually claimed 99, but you're just not going to see it. Use any kind of meter you want. You're not going to see a 99. The big difference is that with remote phosphor, the way we've designed it and built it, we get a true 10-to-1 ratio, meaning that like in the Area 48, which is a $2,000 light, puts out 1.2K light output with a draw of only 122 watts of power. So we have a 10-to-1 ratio. The flip side of that is a typical LED only goes out about 12, 15 feet and then slowly disappears. The curve, it just drops off. In a remote phosphor light, you can go 25 or 30 feet, almost twice the distance. I mean, we lit Hacksaw Ridge. We had 8 Area 48s in an 8x8 box. We lit Hacksaw Ridge with 14 of those rigs up in the sky at 80 feet down to 50 feet. And that's with remote phosphor. Each box was a 10,000 watt box. Only weighed 100 pounds, only drew 1,000 watts.
For someone that doesn't live lighting the way you do, but what's the difference between a remote phosphor and simply a gel that you're putting in front of the light?
Well, the gel actually takes away from the output of the light. If you use a 3-watt LED or a 2-watt LED, they can get pretty harsh, so you have to diffuse them. So you're not putting a gel in front of the light, but you're going to diffuse it. We prefer to be only daylight or tungsten, but we do offer 27, 32, 43, 56, 65 chroma blue, and 10,000 Kelvin that we use on Independence Day. But we're not diffusing it. We're using raw blue LEDs, so there's no color shift. There's no color change of any type. The phosphor is illuminated by the blue LEDs. They're excited, so we get all that output, maximum output out of an LED by doing it that way.
You've been in lighting for a long time. How has the changes in camera technology affected lighting and lighting hardware?
In the last, let's just say 10 years, I mean, we've gone from pretty good cameras to really good cameras. I mean, heck, your cell phone can do 4K. It's really changed, but the bottom basics of it all is that there's some really good lenses out there, so you can focus it really well. And the chips are so fast. You can say you're looking for 5600, you dial it in on your camera, and if you're not putting 5600 in front of the camera, it's looking for it. And when you shoot what you've got and you look at the small monitor you've got when you're doing documentaries or in the field work, and you don't have big, beautiful studio monitors to work with, and then you get into post-production and you start to look at your monitor, you go, wait a minute, that's not exactly what I shot. Because the camera is so smart, it's actually trying to compensate for what you didn't get right. So color is really important. In today's world, they're offering RGB now, multicolor lights. Most of the multicolor lights today that are out there are not that accurate. A lot of people claim that, but if you actually used it with a camera, you don't want to put the RGB lights on skin tones. You still want to have daylight as much as possible on skin tones. If you're going to shoot with color, you've got to be able to have it pretty accurate. At IBC this year in September, BB&S will release its first run of RGB products. It'll be true, accurate color, and with proper daylight and proper tungsten. So it'll be RGB WW.
One of the things I've learned in putting this show together is that different camera sensors react differently to the same spectrum of light. Do we need to start to worry about matching our lights to our cameras?
Good question. Depends on what you're shooting. And we do a lot of broadcast studios, and they're going almost all daylight. They've all gone to newer cameras, 2K, 4K cameras. And the daylight and the remote phosphor gives them much better skin tones. I'm trying to figure out how to put this. Everybody has a different look. Everybody has different meters. All the DPs are trying to get this look that they want. You have to be a little bit creative, but you just need better lighting. You don't need more lighting. You need better lighting. Because the cameras are low light cameras now. The chips are low light. So better lighting is more important. Color is very important. Accurate color is very important, but just better lighting for the new cameras.
For people who want more information about the lighting gear that BB&S provides, where can they go on the web?
www.bbslighting.com.
That's all one word, BBS Lighting, bbslighting.com. And Toby Sali is one of the co-owners of BB&S Lighting. And Toby, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Freider Hochheim is the president of Kino Lighting Systems. He founded the company 30 years ago along with Gary Swink. Over the years, they earned an Academy Award for technical achievement for their color-correct, portable fluorescent lighting systems. Hello, Freider, welcome.
Thank you for having me on your show. Looking forward to our chat.
It is my pleasure. I'm looking forward to our conversation. How would you describe Kino the company?
Kino the company, grew out of necessity, trying to solve some lighting problems. I was a lighting director, and every time the camera moves, you're solving a new lighting problem. And at the time I started the company, it was now 31 years ago, the film stocks were getting much faster, the cameras were getting smaller, people were shooting more and more interiors on location. As a consequence, the studio lighting, which were large, bulky instruments that you would have to bounce the light into a large reflective card to achieve a soft quality of light, took up an awful lot of floor space. So you're losing real estate, small cramped room, and we thought, there has to be a much better way of trying to create a soft light. And Kino was a solution to that end.
Why fluorescence? In those days, fluorescents were notable for their completely inaccurate color.
Absolutely, and that was the challenge. Chuck Minsky, ASC, asked me to look into this on a Dennis Hopper picture that we're trying to do in West Virginia. We'd been using fluorescents with color correction gels to try to take out the green spike, but they were very heavy, very bulky. And so he said, well, can't you just gut one of the architectural fixtures and put it into a foam block, and let's see if we can stick that up on a ceiling, and it'll be a nice top soft light. And I said, absolutely, let's try it. Well, it was a miserable failure because the electronics we were using were magnetic, and there was no way that we could push sufficient power through the cables, even at 25 feet, to ignite the lamp. So the impedance loss of the cable just killed it. But what it did set up was this thought, it's not actually a crazy idea because the tube in and of itself is very lightweight. And I did come across, this was in 87, 86, I came across a company called Magnatech that was working for Xerox. And they were developing high-frequency fluorescent ballasts for copiers. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I can get rid of the flicker, number one, and also maybe it'll drive a lamp, whereas these other ballasts didn't work. And I called them up and said, hey, I'm this guy from Hollywood, and I'd like to try this thing. This is my idea. Will this work? And they went, oh, sure. As a matter of fact, we'll just send you a ballast. So I didn't even have to pay for this thing. And they FedExed over this electronic ballast. It was a prototype. I laid it out on the bench, plugged in the wires, and lo and behold, the light snapped on instantly. We added 100 feet of cable to this thing. It still snapped on instantly. And it was like, this was like an epiphany. Oh my God, I think we've hit it. In retrospect, reading the Steve Jobs book, that was the same year that Jobs and Bill Gates were rummaging around at Xerox looking for inspiration. So Xerox at that time in their development departments had all kinds of wild, crazy ideas that were going on that had other purposes that Xerox had absolutely no realization could be used elsewhere.
Well, here's the hard question. You're sitting down? Your original products, and by the way, people swear by Kino. I've worked with more cinematographers that think Kino fluorescents are just the best there is, but they use fluorescent tubes. Yet the world of lighting has moved to LED. Does this mean Kino is irrelevant?
What is happening in our world, in my world, is that Kino is reinventing itself. Where we used to be a fluorescent company, we've now become a software and solid-state lighting solutions company. The interesting thing about the LED is that in and of itself, the technology is that of a fluorescent. So you still have a blue emitter, just like fluorescent tube had a UV arc stream, and you had phosphor. And so in a fluorescent lamp, the lamp was illuminated by this UV arc stream. So our knowledge of phosphor and film response, the spectral sensitivity curves of films, we were able to now actually together with two other partners, come up with custom LED packages that have our phosphor on them. So once we understood film, we knew how to construct it. Now with electronic cinema cameras, that spectral response curve, as much as the camera companies told us is the same as film, we discovered through our research that, quite frankly, it's very different. And that has been the challenge, sort of addressing the spectral qualities of cinema cameras and what's really necessary to achieve that high-end quality.
This gets to an interesting question. How does current camera technology drive lighting?
We've abandoned silver halides and celluloid. Everything's gone to zeros and ones and hard drives. The capabilities of these cameras is now vastly expanded. When Kino first started, the big innovation there was 100 ASA or ISO film. And that was a revelation. It was phenomenal. I mean, you could now shoot at light levels that was never before imaginable. And if you pushed it, you could push it to 250, and oh my God, the images you could create. And so now we're looking at the electronic cinema, and there initially it was a native ISO they said, well, it's maybe around 300 and then you discovered, in fact, it was much higher than that. Now we're looking at cameras where we're able to go upwards of 2,000 ISO. We're now lighting by candlelight. So that radically redefines how you approach light. But one constant remains. And the constant is, of course, the sun. So you're going to step outside the door. You're now facing a light environment that is upwards of between a midday sun between 7,000 and 8,000 foot candle. The camera has to be able to handle that. In the early cameras, they were freaking out because, of course, the camera was much more light sensitive and it didn't need 8,000 foot candle. So now you packed a huge filter pack of neutral density filters on the camera to get anywhere near the lens where it's sort of at a midpoint of a 5.6. Otherwise, you're constantly stopped down. And of course, everything was razor sharp from, 3 inches in front of the lens to infinity. And everybody goes, this looks crazy. This doesn't look like film. Of course not, because this camera is now so light sensitive. So of course, this revolutionizes our entire approach as to how do we now light. It revolutionizes it in respect to the technology now necessary, but the fundamental principles of how you approach lighting a scene, I think that still has remained the same since it was back in 1901 when it all started. The fluorescent technology is still spectrally almost unsurpassed. Our daylight lamp is used by museums for art restoration. They're a standard in a lot of companies for their camera prep bays where they do their camera alignments. So when we talk about CRI, color rendering index, this is a measure of how the eye sees light. How does that relate to a camera? Well, it doesn't really. The camera sees light very differently. But methodology in achieving those numbers, we simply said, let's take the same methodology, but now let's apply the camera curve. So instead of the photopic curve, which is the eye, we took a camera curve. We took an Alexa. We took a Red. We took a Panasonic, a Canon. And we started looking at them and we said, oh my goodness, look at this. We're actually looking at the same light source, but it's seeing each one of these cameras is seeing it slightly different. And these slight differences show up in terms of how they render, let's say, a skin tone. One may have a slight hue difference where one looks a little more magenta, one looks a little more green. So if you're going to put out a light source and it's going to be color correct, what camera is it going to be correct to? If you're going to put a lookup table for each camera in the instrument to adjust or to sort of attenuate itself to optimize its performance. So at this point, we just chose to go with the Alexa. It was the dominant camera in the market. And we said, okay, it's going to be profiled on the Alexa. If you've got an Alexa, you know that your color is going to be great. But we'll give you sufficient control that you can add a little magenta or add a little green and correct out any of these anomalies should you be shooting with another camera and see that there's a difference. I'm finding the interesting thing now in our market is that it is so rapidly changing. And I think the challenge for our market is that there is so much chaos with a lot of different product. What used to be in our industry maybe a handful of suppliers, maybe 5 suppliers that were the professional suppliers of lighting. Now you have this cacophony of product that is flowing from around the world, none of which matches in terms of color quality. It varies in manufacturing quality, and it gets to be very confusing. All these new options, all this color chaos, let's call it, we're seeing it in our daily images coming through the web, coming through even from the professional side. And what I find interesting is how it's actually redefining our visual aesthetic. When I started in the industry, everything had to be very pristine. You had to try to balance out your light, that everything was color correct. Nowadays, it's like, does it really matter? We have daylight. We have tungsten light, which is now virtually almost disappeared from the market. Everything else is artificial light and is discontinuous spectrum. And with that come all these other color anomalies. And people are accepting these anomalies, and it's becoming a new visual language for us. And I think aesthetically, seeing different hues on faces is becoming more and more acceptable. And I think it's very exciting.
It's of course the fact that everybody now has a camera.
Absolutely.
And they shoot video, they post it to Facebook, and they look at it, and it's not professional, but it's what they see every day.
And it's real. And it's that visceral reality, I think, that does strike a chord with the population.
For people who want more information about KinoFlow's products, where can they go on the web?
Use your fingers and tap on the keys, www.kinoflo.com.
That's all one word, KINOFLO, kinoflow.com. And Freider Hochheim is the president of KinoFlow Lighting Systems. And Freider, thank you so very much for joining us.
It was a pleasure.
I want to introduce you to a new website, Thalo.com. Thalo is an artist community and networking site for creative people to connect, be inspired, and showcase their creativity. Thalo.com features content from around the world with a global perspective on all things creative. Thalo is the place for creative folks to learn, collaborate, market, and sell their works. Thalo is a part of Thalo Arts, a worldwide community of artists, filmmakers, and storytellers. From photography to filmmaking, performing arts to fine arts, and everything in between, Thalo is filled with the resources you need to succeed. Visit Thalo.com and discover how their community can help you connect, learn, and succeed. That's Thalo.com. Stefan Karle founded DOP Choice in 2008 to create high-quality lighting tools and accessories. Based in Munich, his company has since invented snap bags, snap grids, and butterfly grids, along with many other lighting tools. Hello, Stefan. Welcome.
Hello.
How would you describe DOP Choice, the company?
DOP Choice is the accessory maker for all the actual LED lights. So we are producing all the products that you have mentioned before. So we're not producing the lighting fixtures. We are producing everything that you are using to shape your light.
Why build a company to create these tools? Why was it necessary?
My background was cinematographer, and I was unhappy with the existing products that had been on the market, and I tried my luck to do it better. So I had some luck. In the business, it went quite well.
Why is it necessary to shape the light? What would be situations where gear like yours becomes helpful? Because normally we just sort of point a light in the direction we want to have it illuminated, wouldn't we?
Yeah, just look back in the past. We had very small filaments, so the light source itself was very small, but you could direct really easily. For example, if you look at a Freider spotlight, you can really direct it in a nice way. It just used the flaps of a barn door to get a shadow here and there at the door, at the wall, whatever in a studio setup. LED lights, it was kind of a game changer, or it was before also with fluorescent tubes that became bigger sources, as well with the soft boxes that you have used on some open faces. You have a big light source, and to direct this, it's quite not so easy to do it. There had been some existing tools that worked okay, but the bigger the sources became, the more complicated it becomes. So Basically, in the film or in a movie, you want to create not only light, you also want to create shadow. And therefore, you need, for example, the grids to create this kind of contrast, to have some areas not fully lit up, to have it more concentrated the light on specific points.
In other words, because the lights were so big, they cast light illumination in so many different directions that your accessories were necessary to sort of restrict the direction the light went.
Yes, so you can concentrate it on different beam angles. For example, with the snap grids, we have 20, 30, 40 degree, up to 50, or also 90-degree beam angle of the soft lights. And the interesting thing was, with all the new LED lights that are actually on the market, they are all panel lights. So if you look, for example, at one big one, the 360, it would spread the light each and everywhere. So that's why you definitely need in so many different locations the grids that are very shallow, and you don't need all the flags on the left and right hand side to get it under control.
Well, the other challenge, it seems to me, is that the bigger your light gets, the softer your shadows get. If you wanted really sharp, clear shadows, soft lights are the wrong way to go.
Correct, but also I think it's not only this matter, it's also the other thing that we have also the panel lights that are so soft and going everywhere, and you're losing a lot of light if you just eliminate it with a snap grid, with a grade. What is also much more clever is just to intensify the light, to concentrate it again on a specific area. Therefore, we are using very hard reflective fabrics on our soft boxes, the snapbacks, that are really focusing the light in the specific directions.
There are so many options for lighting gear, not just from your company, but from other companies as well. How do we make the decision on what gear, especially if we're starting out, what gears should be in a basic kit?
I think in a basic kit, you should look firstly about having a battery-operated situation, because this is, in my point of view, was one of the big game changer of the LED lights, to be able to shoot and light up everywhere with a battery. So this would be first criteria. The second criteria, in my point of view, is like, in what situation do you like to have it? Are you happy just having a single color light, like what you have with remote phosphor systems that are very precise in color, or do you want to have a bicolor version where you have with two colors, warm and cold light? And on the other hand, if you want to have like the full color spectrum, it's very often you're offered everything, but if you look later on the output, it's perhaps sometimes more clever just to think in advance, do I really need to have all the options, or just use the one that is very good for me, and from a budget point that I can have for a smaller budget, a much brighter light or a more universal light that I have 2 or 3 units. And from there also to get some accessory to make it to a bigger surface, because the normal LED lights itself are still quite small, but they were quite clever and easy solution, especially for traveling with the snapbacks, to make a small light to a big light.
How are you seeing the rapid technological change in cameras drive lighting? And is that more focused at the instrument maker, or are you yourself creating new accessories because of the way cameras now function?
It's quite interesting to see the parallel development in a way. When I was still active as a cinematographer, there was this technology change from film to digital. And LED is quite similar to the existing light sources, tungsten, HMI, and so on, to LED. And it's mostly driven not only by our industry, it's mostly driven by this huge amount of different kind of industries that are using, for example, the digital cameras, and on the other hand, the LED lights. If you look in the architecture and so on, they are the ones that are putting so much money in development in this LED technology. And, we are in the film industry more like a little side effect. If you would not have this big money maker like in the household or architectural lighting, there would not be so much and so many technology changes as we have it right now in the LED. Basically, I look very much into that because especially us as a manufacturer for as many different brands, I always want to see the new technology and what is coming up. And this is quite interesting. And it's also quite interesting to talk to as many different manufacturers, what they think or what they focusing on what kind of technology. And it's quite, I don't know if a laser light, for example, will become interesting in the future. We have some car manufacturers like BMW who are using in the 7 Series now with kind of lighting technologies. But I think there will be also some other things coming up. I think changes are very interesting and good. For the people who invest at the moment, it's kind of a tough situation because we have a lot of different manufacturers and you don't know how quick or how long is your product supported. And with this kind of a little challenge. But I think this is the time of a change. I guess that we will see a kind of a consolidation within the next few years in this area. And so let's see. But it was very interesting to see how many new companies came into this market. For example, Kino or BB&S, Velvet light that is quite popular here in Europe, or DMG Lumiere that had been bought now by Roscoe last year. It's interesting, young new companies that have been fascinated with kind of new technology and made fantastic product from the very beginning. But right now I have a feeling that the big players are back with Ari, with Kino Floor. Yeah, I forgot, for example, before also Lightyear, that was also a nobody before. Nobody knew Lightyear before. They just did this light ribbons at the beginning, and now where you see them everywhere, each and every time in each and every rental company. So it's interesting. Let's see how it will develop in a few years. That is kind of also interesting, The young and smaller companies, perhaps we are more flexible to react on these changes.
Thinking of changes, what's your latest product? What's new with you?
Our latest products have been recently for the RE360, for one of the biggest LED lights on the market. We have made a collapsible 6x6 snapback, but it's quite nice. So you don't need a big butterfly frame in front of this, and it also intensifies the light in front. Also, we have completed almost the range of the Revidier system up to the Octa 7. We will also show up a lot of new products to the upcoming IBC that will be held in September in Amsterdam. So we still have to be a little bit quiet about it, but you will see more at this time. I'm excited, and it keeps me busy at the moment.
Oh, very exciting. IBC will be a good time. For people who want more information about the products of DOP Choice, where can they go on the web?
dopchoice.com. Or in America, we have our partner company that is called therecplace.com.
That website is all one word, dopchoice.com. And Stefan Karle is the founder of DOP Choice. And Stefan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
I was just thinking, all this talk about lighting reminds me of my first major lighting gig. I was fresh out of film school, and as any film student will tell you, they know everything. I was working for KGVO TV in Missoula, Montana, directing news and helping create local commercials in their studio. We landed a local client who asked us to create a nice-looking spot for their perfume business. In those days, retail stores could get giant glass mock-ups of perfume containers to put in their store window to attract passers-by. So we decided to create a 30-second visual ode to Chanel No. 5 using one of these giant glass perfume containers filled with golden perfume. Since I was the film school grad, I volunteered to light it. Now, these were the days of TK42 and TK43 cameras. They were 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, weighed well over 400 pounds, and it took an immense amount of light to make an image. My film training told me that we needed to use 3 2,000-watt lights, one for the key, another for the fill, and a third for the backlight. Each of these lights was about 8 feet from the bottle, and needless to say, it was bright. But I realized that what would really make this ad sparkle would be to put another 2,000-watt light under the perfume bottle to make it look like the perfume itself was glowing. So we put one more light on a floor stand and fired it up. I went back to the machine room to load a blank videotape on the 2-inch tape machine, and I could see the perfume on the video monitor, and it looked glorious. I looked down to thread the tape through the machine, and when I looked up, the monitor was blank, totally empty. I rushed into the studio to see David, the studio supervisor, beating at a 14-foot column of flame with a broom handle. The perfume bottle had exploded. As I helped put out the fire, I realized that putting the perfume bottle on a piece of plate glass resting directly on a 2,000-watt underlight was perhaps not the smartest lighting choice I could have made. The smell of burned perfume was so overpowering that we did the news from the parking lot that night. But boy, until it exploded, that perfume bottle looked gorgeous. Just something I'm thinking about. I want to thank our guests for this week. Jakob Ballinger with the Light Bridge, Toby Sali of BB&S Lighting, Freider Hochheim from Kino, Stefan Karle from DOP Choice, and, as always, James DeRuvo with DoddleNEWS.com. There's a lot of history in our industry, and it's all posted to our website at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Here you'll find thousands of interviews, all online and all available to you today. And remember to sign up for our free weekly show newsletter that comes out every Saturday. Talk with us on Twitter at DPBuzz and Facebook at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Our theme music is composed by Nathan Doogie Turner, with additional music provided by smartsound.com. Our producer is Debbie Price. My name is Larry Jordan, and thanks for listening to the Digital Production Buzz. The Digital Production Buzz is copyright 2018 by Thalo LLC.